I had some fun with the Thanksgiving turkey before we ate it. It happened on Thanksgiving when my family bought a turkey for our special feast. Little did they know I had a secret plan. I liked that turkey a lot. Every time I saw it in the kitchen, I couldn't help but feel a strange connection. It had become more than just a meal to me. So I decided to surprise it before it became our Thanksgiving dinner. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, I tiptoed into the kitchen. My heart raced with excitement and a bit of nervousness. I gently approached the turkey. And in that moment, I couldn't resist it. As I did what I had to do, a wave of emotion washed over me. I felt a sense of gratitude for the life it had lived, and a strange bond formed between us. After a while, I left the kitchen and went back to my room. The next day, when we gathered around the table for our Thanksgiving feast, I couldn't help but smile. I knew that turkey had felt my love. Even if it was just for a brief moment, it made our meal even more meaningful. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to support us and learn about the stories of other people, consider following us.
This is the exact spot where a woman landed after she fell out of her fourth-story apartment. There were many witnesses who saw the entire thing happen, and right away, many of them called the police. However, just as quickly, a man came outside from the building, went towards the woman, picked her up, and carried her back inside. And that woman would later be identified as 29-year-old Tatiana Spitzner. And at the time all of this happened, she was living in Brazil with her boyfriend in a town known as Guarapava. And according to her friends and family, she was known for being a very happy and outgoing person. And she also happened to be a lawyer. In 2013, Tatiana would go on to meet her future husband, Luis. And right from the very beginning, it was obvious to everyone that these two were the complete opposite. While Tatiana was outgoing, Luis was said to have been very introverted. But that didn't matter to them. Their relationship ended up progressing very quickly. And they were engaged by the end of their first year of dating, and they were married just a few weeks after they got engaged. Now, for a majority of his life, Luis was always said to have been a very healthy and active person. But after the two got married, he started taking this much more seriously. And it got to the point where he started taking illegal substances in order to grow bigger. And unfortunately, this ended up impacting their relationship quite negatively. Tatiana was known to go to her friends and tell them the truth about what was happening in her relationship. Luis apparently began disrespecting Tatiana in public, and he would humiliate her every chance he got. And he also became extremely controlling. If Tatiana wore something he didn't like, he would burn it. And eventually he also stopped letting her spend her own money. And eventually he also became physically abusive towards Tatiana. But then on his birthday in 2018, things got to an all-time high. The two were supposed to meet a bunch of friends at a local restaurant to celebrate Luis's birthday. But before they got there, they were already arguing. And at one point during the dinner, Tatiana accused him of cheating when she saw him messaging a girl on Instagram. He then accused Tatiana of being extremely insecure. And then from there, they got into a huge argument to the point where one of Tatiana's friends had to intervene. Later that night is when the police were called to the couple's apartment. And that was because everyone had seen the woman fall from the building. Police then followed the blood trail up to the couple's apartment where they found Tatiana's body. However, Luis was already on the run. He had tried to run off in his car but ended up crashing, and that's when they arrested him. And right away, he tried telling police that Tatiana had jumped on her own and that he was so disturbed about what had happened that he had to leave. But when police looked at CCTV footage from the couple when they arrived home that night, they could see an altercation happening in the garage. And this abusive behavior continued in the elevator up to the apartment. And police would later find out that Luis had actually strangled Tatiana, and then he had thrown her body over the balcony in order to cover it up. He continued to deny any involvement in what happened to Tatiana, but thankfully he was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
A body of a young boy was found inside of a trunk in which nobody knew was missing. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Quincy Davis. Viewer discretion is advised. Quincy Jamar Davis was born on June 23, 1990, and he was born in North Carolina, but at some point they moved to Virginia. Quincy was described as a big-hearted prankster, a flirt, a goofball, and just a really good friend. And he also loved running track. Now, Quincy was attending Virginia Beach Middle School in Virginia, and then just sort of one day he just stopped showing up. And this adds a layer of tragedy that just makes this so much worse, because nobody knew it. Nobody knew or realized that Quincy was just suddenly gone. No one looked for him. Family, friends. I think a lot of people at school just assumed that maybe he and his mom and his brother had just sort of moved away and didn't say anything. But nobody knew that he went missing. The mother never reported him missing. But it's just staggering to me that not one person thought to themselves, oh my God, I haven't seen Quincy in so long. Where is he? That is until June of 2015, when Tanya Slayton, who was Quincy's mother, was pulled over on the I-64 near Virginia. During what they called a routine traffic stop, I guess something led to them wanting to open the trunk. I believe it was like a really strong odor. So when the police officer opened the trunk, there was a bunch of clothing on top of a black trash bag that had been tied up. When they ripped open the trash bag, they found a decomposed human body of what they could determine was probably a young person. And it would later turn out to be the body of Quincy Davis. The coroner would determine that he died sometime around 2004, maybe 2005. And his mother, Tanya, had him in her trunk for up to 11 years. A decomposing body in her trunk for over a decade, and nobody noticed. And then in 2007, she drove up to an ex-boyfriend's house and shot 4 rounds into his home. She was arrested, charged, and convicted for that crime. She served 4 years in prison while her son's body is still in the trunk of her car that still nobody noticed. It's unbelievable to me. In 2018, she would finally plead guilty to murdering her son. She didn't say how, and the coroner couldn't determine how. She was only given a 10-year sentence for that.
Happy Saturday, guys. Oh my God, check out the story of the Cleveland mom. This is her, Crystal Candelario, 31 of Cleveland, leaving the baby home alone to die after going on vacation. Let's talk about it. Anyways, trigger warning for everything. Get your peak buckets out because Crystal is a whole trash can and toilet brush. So anyways, guys, as not a mother, when I want to go on vacation, I just leave, because I don't have any responsibilities. I've never birthed a child. I've never adopted a child. I've never fostered a child. So I can just go wherever I want to. And I think that's what Crystal thought she could do. But the hell you can, Crystal, because what Crystal did is awful. And now she's going to prison forever for murder. May she rot there. So Crystal here somehow lost the memo that it's your responsibility to take care of your child, even though the neighbors, I love some neighbors who want to give some tea, have come out and said that Crystal wasn't a very good mother. Like the neighbors and the grandparents watch the kids most of the time because Crystal, she did have a job, but she also liked to party. Allegedly for educational purposes only. So Crystal decides that she's going to go on vacation from June 8th until June 16th. And instead of getting a babysitter, she was just going to let her 16-month-old daughter watch herself, because that makes total sense. Only person to come up with that is somebody who don't have 2 brain cells to rub together, like Crystal, allegedly for educational purposes only. So during those 8 days, Crystal travels to Puerto Rico, a whole nother country. Just kidding, I know it's part of the United States. And then on to Michigan. And then she comes home and finds her baby unresponsive. And she is shocked. Like, why is my baby not even breathing? So according to the nosy neighbor, Crystal lives with her parents. And her parents are the ones who take care of the baby normally, but they were actually out of town on a trip as well. And so Crystal was like, I could wait. I could schedule my trip when my parents were at home and my baby wouldn't die, but I don't think so. I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to put them at the same time and see how my baby does. And more neighbors have come forward saying, we watched her kid before because she was an irresponsible parent. Like if she would have just asked us, we would have watched her child. But see, to me, Crystal didn't want that baby no more. Crystal wanted her baby just as much as that 18-year-old who threw that baby in a hospital trash can wanted her baby. They don't want them babies. People like Crystal like to play mattress without protection and then don't want to deal with the responsibilities of having a child. How about not having one? So Crystal here left sweet 16-month-old Jalen at home alone for 10 days. When police arrived and looked in her playpen, they found that it was soiled and completely full of urine and feces. Crystal has been charged with the murder of her daughter, and she is being held on a $1 million bond, allegedly for educational purposes only. But like I always say, may she go to jail, and then may she rot in hell. So y'all have a great Saturday, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
I felt my daughter's spirit the moment she died. Something woke me up, and I sat at the foot of, sat up, and a spear went through my forehead, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, Shanann. And I said, holy, something happened to my daughter. I knew. I swear to God, I knew. I woke up Frankie. I woke up the whole house. I said, something's wrong with Shannon. I'm telling you, something's wrong. And
we didn't know she was missing yet. We didn't know anything.
But you knew.
She knows all the time. She's got intuition. I don't know how she knows these things.
So
She
what
came
did
out of
y'all
my
think when
womb.
she came to you and said this?
Oh,
I didn't think
paranoid.
anything of it. Yeah, I was like, Mom, you're just worried.
Okay, I'm putting out a trigger warning. Please, if this triggers you, do not watch it. We are going to point out the moment when the baby is actually removed from the bag, and at one point you can see the head of the baby on the gurney. Again, trigger warning. So I want you guys to look at what's happening right here. After they come back and get the baby, I want you to look to your left. You can actually see the room that they go into and the table where they put the baby. Right in the corner. Right here. I'm gonna move it down so we can look at the timestamps. Looks like it froze there for a second. Okay, right here. See, he's bent down. It looks like he then picks up the bag and puts it on the table before they actually open it. And then he backs away. That baby's sitting right there. They look like they're really leery about touching the baby. I'm not going to speculate what's going on there. It looks like he's looking down closely. But at this point, the doctor blocks the view. So we're not able to determine what they're doing at that point. But the doctor says nobody was allowed to touch the baby, so. And then someone else comes in and blocks, and that's basically all the footage we have. You see that little black dot right there? Baby's head. But clearly you can actually see the baby there on the gurney. You can see the baby's head right there the whole time. And just stands there looking at the baby. And at this point, baby's dead. So I get it. But they close the door and leave the baby in there, and that's the end of that.
The weekend of September 17th started out unusually quiet for Terry and her kids. Damien had disappeared on one of his drug-fueled weekends, so Terry was home alone with her kids, giving them some much-needed peace and quiet from Damien's habits. Her daughter Lacey had her best friend sleep over that evening, and everything was going fine. The following morning, the kids were up bright and early and decided to put up a sweet stall outside the house, telling Terry that they are trying to raise money for cancer research. The fun-filled day practically flew by, and before they knew it, it was nearly time for Lacey's friend to go back home. Connie, who was enjoying the time she got to spend with Lacey, wasn't quite ready to end the weekend just yet, so she texted her mom to ask if she could stay over one more night. Her mom agreed, and the friends were elated. That evening, Connie's mom was in regular contact with her daughter, even texting her to say goodnight, as the family was getting ready for bed. But seemingly out of nowhere, things would take a drastic and sudden turn for the worse. It's believed that at some point during the evening, Damien returned from his 3-day cocaine bender. It's not known exactly what happened or whether an argument broke out, but between 9:30 and 10 p.m., Damien attacked each member of the household with a claw hammer. It's believed that he started with Terry and her unborn baby, and at this point the kids all ran to different parts of the house in an attempt to hide from him. Damien walked through the house room by room, looking for the kids, and as soon as he found one of them hiding, he would attack them with the claw hammer, repeatedly striking them in the head. After he attacked 11-year-old Lacey, and while she was in the process of dying, he picked her up and took her to Terry's room where he continued to have his way with her in front of her dying mother. It's believed that he also put up a mirror so that he could watch himself doing this despicable deed to little Lacey. After Damien Bendall had killed all 4 members of the house, he was then caught on CCTV carrying a bag containing John Paul's Xbox, which he went to exchange for even more drugs. He was later caught on CCTV once again at a nearby shop where he showed no signs of panic or indication of the atrocities he committed a few hours earlier. Damien then took a taxi back to Terry's home, eerily telling the driver that he had a mad night. Once he got to Terry's house, he used her mobile phone to make the following call to 999.
Basically, I need the police and the ambulance and that because I've killed 4 people.
Okay, just hold the line. Bear with me.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Alright, come to me. Mate, have you got anything on you that you shouldn't have?
No, there's no weapons or nothing.
Right.
Do you just want them to do your coat? Have you armed yourself?
Yeah.
You have?
Have you stabbed yourself, mate?
I can see blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
Just my chest, 4 inches in with a bread knife.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, and one on the stomach. I bled quite.
Right, do you want?
Yeah. Can we go down
No, just stay there.
I just don't want to be in front of them.
Alright, just go on the corner.
Just walking wounded at the minute.
Alright, stand here. Stay here.
Right,
So
we told you, I know what's going to happen to you now, mate.
Well, I know it's going to happen when you go to prison, obviously, again.
Why, what have you done? Have you done something to anyone else?
Yeah.
What have you done?
I've murdered 4 people.
He's been calm and compliant, but he's got some stab wounds to his chest. They're not oozing blood, but he's saying that his family are inside and that he believes he has murdered them.
On December 21st, 2021, Damien Bendall pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and 1 count of rape. He admitted to killing Terry Harris, 13-year-old John Paul Bennett, 11-year-old Lacey Bennett, and Lacey's 11-year-old friend, Connie Gent. He also admitted to raping Lacey. He admitted to the court that he attacked them with the claw hammer and said that none of his victims stood a chance against his attacks. The court handed him a whole life-term sentence for his crime, meaning that he will stay in jail without the possibility of parole.
Couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear screams. It felt like I was out there on my own.
Tia Coleman, speaking from her hospital bed, was on an annual vacation with 10 other family members when disaster struck.
Finally, I said, Lord, just let me die. Let me die. I said, I can't keep drowning. I just can't keep drowning because that's how I felt. And then I just let go.
What is that balloon? Is that?
Oh, I think it's the water.
Oh, those poor people.
Oh my gosh.
That driver quits when he gets back in.
Oh no.
During a violent storm, a duck boat sank on Table Rock Lake in Branson, Missouri. There were 31 people on board. 17 died, including the driver and 9 members of a family.
14-year-old Lauren Smith swam out of the sinking boat to safety. Her father, Steve, a 53-year-old church deacon, and her 15-year-old brother, Lance, were among the 17 people who drowned.
How did you make it out?
I don't know.
I heard that you helped someone else, though, too.
I went up and I saw someone struggling. I went up to push up their feet so they could get help. But the waves were too big. I couldn't go back to save that person.
I think I heard my sister-in-law yell, was grab the baby. Last big wave came in. I lost hold of my baby. I didn't know the boat had capsized. I thought he just went under. I jumped up and immediately started floating. I couldn't find any of my family. And I swam and I swam. And it seemed like the more I swam, the further in the water I got.
Coleman losing her husband and 3 children, the youngest just a year old. her 13-year-old nephew, Donovan, her only relative on board to survive. Her family, 9 of the 17 killed that day.
Somebody told me that when they found my husband, he had all 3 of my babies. So the reason I couldn't find him is because he was protecting them. That right there will keep me fighting for my family forever. The memory of all of my family, not just my children and my husband, but for my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my uncle, my nephew, my sister-in-law, and my surviving nephew.
A lawsuit has been filed against the owners and operators of the duck boat that sank on a Missouri lake earlier this month. 17 people were killed when the boat went down during a storm on Table Rock Lake in Branson. The federal lawsuit accuses Ripley Entertainment and others of ignoring bad weather warnings that day and of knowing that design flaws made the boat susceptible to sinking. The suit was filed on behalf of 2 members of a family from Indiana who lost 9 relatives in the tragedy.
I have an update in the Chad Duerman case. Chad has officially pled not guilty, and we need to talk about that. This man already admitted to taking the life of all 3 of his boys, Hunter, Clayton, and Chase. And just look at these kids, guys. How freaking adorable are they? Even though he's already admitted to this, he's still going to take legitimately 0% in terms of the ownership for this crime. He's taking none of it. Absolutely none of it. Which, if you've been following this case, should not come as a surprise to you, because this man and even his parents had the audacity to go for a $75,000 bond that his mom and dad were both willing to co-sign on. Because taking any responsibility for taking the life of your 3 kids, I guess, isn't something that this family is about. They don't do the whole actions and consequences thing that the rest of us here, normal folk on this earth, live by. But I digress on that. We also have details as to what took place in that home now that we didn't have just a few days ago. During this hearing, the prosecution also stated that Chad took the life of his middle child first in the home. This precious child witnessed this happening and took off, running for his life, busted through the front door, and was running towards the road. Chad went after his son, and I can't say the word here because my account's in double warning, but he used the same weapon of choice to his son from behind. While this 7-year-old little boy is running for his life towards a road, feeling, I can't even imagine what types of adrenaline and fear and just complete confusion, honestly. I mean, he's 7 years old. There's no way he could comprehend what he had just witnessed, and no way he could process that and run at the same time. It's just, it's tragic. Absolutely tragic. And it gets worse from here, guys. If you're already having a hard time with the first 2 children, I would honestly just swipe away, because it gets so much worse. This is the baby right here in the far car seat by the window. He was in his mother's arms as all of this is unfolding. I would assume it probably happened really quickly, so the mother is still clinging to him. It is alleged by the prosecution that Chad approaches Laura, who was his wife, she was holding the baby, and forcefully rips him out of her arms. Chad then takes this baby's life by harming him in the head area. I'm sorry if I'm wording this in an annoying way. My account is literally 1 strike away from getting deleted, so I have to be very careful. The fact that this man was capable of doing this, he admitted to this. That's how the prosecution knows. He had already admitted to this to law enforcement, but yet he's still going to show up in court and say not guilty. We are still waiting to hear more on the motive, but I'm gonna just go ahead and call this one. There's no good reason. He's not going to come out of the woodworks with an explanation that leaves us all like, okay, I can see how that happened, Chad. No, this guy, there's no good reason. There's no good explanation for this, but I am still here ready to get further upset by hearing his ridiculous motive or reason for doing this. And you already know cases like this just truly upset me. Anything involving children and harming children, exploiting children, genuinely, it's disgusting. It upsets me to no end. So I'm going to be following this one, of course, very closely. If you want to stay up to date with the latest on the Chad Duerman case, just hit that follow button. I'll be keeping y'all updated.
Drugs, alcohol,